I'm speaking here to you today, as always when I'm speaking with you, not on my own behalf, but simply under obedience to Sayedna, to try to communicate on his behalf some important liturgical matters that he has on his heart that he would like shared with all of you, the priests and deacons of his diocese. Today we're going to be focusing particularly upon musical issues. This is obviously an ongoing discussion, something that we have been discussing in a number of venues for the last couple of years. We're just going to be building upon that. And the notes that I'm going to be using today, I will tell you from the outset, are not my notes. These are not necessarily my thoughts, though I'm in total agreement with the things I'm going to be expressing. But these are actually, I'm going to be sharing with you notes that were prepared for Sayedna Joseph's presentation that he recently gave at the Sacred Music Institute of the West Coast. So it's very important for you to understand that at the outset. But again, I'm not presenting my agenda to you here. I'm trying to share with you what's really on Sayedna's heart about music that he would like you to understand. Father Patrick and I had the opportunity to sit with Sayedna at lunch and receive some last-minute instructions from him before we came in for this session this afternoon. And one of the things that he emphasized to us several times, and so I'd like to emphasize it with you from the outset, is that his desire in this presentation and in all of the presentations on liturgical matters that we are going to be giving you over the next couple of days, his intention is that you be inspired. He has no wish to make your lives in the parish difficult, to create tension between you and your choir directors and your chanters, to cause, what shall I say, undue stress as you try to figure out how to incorporate immediately any number of large-scale musical changes. All of that is very, very far from his intention. His intention, as I said, that he stressed to Father Patrick and I, is he would like us to do our best, and all of us together, to really encourage one another, to be inspired to love the treasure that is our church's sacred musical tradition. We have this tremendous, tremendous treasure house. And for the most part, most of us, myself included, we've only begun to tap into the smallest portion of it. There are great, great riches that remain untapped for us. And he would like us to begin exploring those riches together, parish by parish and throughout the diocese, to find a greater degree of liturgical unity, yes, and to find a greater degree of liturgical fulfillment. As we're led through the traditional services, through the traditional music of the church, into an ever deeper appreciation of the tradition of sacred worship that the church has given to us in our hymnody. So my comments to you over the next half hour or so are going to be something of an introduction to sessions that we're going to be having throughout the rest of the week. Introducing the topic in general of liturgical music, or perhaps it would be better to say ecclesiastical chant. And I'm going to be very upfront with you from the beginning. I'm going to be using, and Father Patrick will be using the term, whenever we speak on this, the term ecclesiastical chant, in preference to the more commonly used expression, Byzantine chant. This is not some sort of obfuscation on our part, somehow trying to hide the fact that what we're talking about is Byzantine chant. Let's be real clear from the very beginning that what we're talking about is what is commonly referred to as Byzantine chant. But there is a problem with that nomenclature, a severe problem with that nomenclature. The problem is there is no group in the history of our church that has ever employed a style of music that they themselves referred to as Byzantine chant. In fact, there is no group within the history of the Orthodox Church, I'll say there's no group in history generally, that has ever described themselves as Byzantines until the advent of Eastern Rite Uniate Catholics, who began using that nomenclature for themselves probably sometime in the 19th century. The term Byzantine is an invention of secular scholarship, and it's a useful invention perhaps in academic settings, to describe the culture of East Rome, the Eastern Roman Empire. But it's very important to know from the outset that those people who we describe as Byzantines and who adopted a culture that we describe as Byzantine never spoke of themselves, never described themselves with that term. The term that they would have used for their culture was Romiosini, the Roman world. This was the culture of Rome, not the ancient Rome of the Republic, not the ancient Rome of the pagan Caesars, but the Rome, the Roman Empire that had been thoroughly conquered by the love of the crucified Christ. You see, this was very, very important for our early Orthodox Christian forebears, this understanding. That very universal culture, if you will, that had put Christ to death, that had tormented the apostles, that had martyred the first generation of Christians, was won over by the love of Christ and by the preaching of the Gospels to become a culture imbued with the spirit of the Gospels, a culture in which all artistic expression was referred back, at least ideally, to the proclamation of the Christian gospel. And for those who inhabited the Romiosini, there was no such thing as Byzantine chant. There was no such thing as Byzantine vestments, Byzantine architecture, Byzantine liturgy. There was chant. There were church vestments. There was church architecture. There was the liturgical expression of the church. This is our common inheritance as Orthodox Christians. It's not something that belongs to one particular Orthodox cultural group, one particular race among many. Because, of course, the Romiosini was made up of people of all different language groups, of all different races and cultural heritages, bound together by a common Christian cultural expression. And that Christian cultural expression touched on all aspects of liturgical artistry. And it also, for our purposes here today, informed the music that was used in the worship of the church. The music which was founded ultimately in the traditions of the ancient synagogue and was brought over seamlessly in the first generation of Christians to be informed by the musical sensibilities of the ancient Hellenistic world, and became something indigenous and universal among our early Orthodox Christian forebears. This is what we're talking about here today. Ecclesiastical chant, that unbroken tradition of music that stems from the very earliest Eucharistic communities, gathering together to offer hymns of praise and worship. With that prologue in mind, I'd like to go through these notes that I have from Sedna and highlight some points. This ecclesiastical chant, this common musical tradition of the church, we affirm is not something man-made, but is rather the work of the Holy Spirit.